When we think about building a startup, one of the most important questions we must answer is how big is the opportunity? Investors, founders, and even MBA students studying case studies all come back to the same core concept: market size. Without understanding it, everything else, from product decisions to fundraising, floats without anchor. Market size isn't just an abstract number, it represents the scope of potential impact, the ceiling for growth, and the justification for risk. Startups succeed not just by solving problems, but by solving problems in markets that are big enough to matter. The TAM, SAM, SOM framework, total addressable market, serviceable available market, and serviceable obtainable market, gives us a structured way to think about scale, realism, and focus. This primer will help us understand why sizing matters, how to calculate it, and how great companies like Uber used it as part of their growth story. Let's start with why market sizing is such a critical exercise. First, it influences investment decisions. Investors don't put capital into businesses without understanding the size of the opportunity. If your startup operates in a tiny niche, even if you dominate it, the returns may never justify the risk for a venture capitalist. Market size tells them whether your company could become the next billion-dollar story, or if it's destined to remain a modest venture. Second, market sizing reveals growth potential. A small market might support a lifestyle business, but venture scale returns require large, scalable opportunities. Understanding the size of the market helps you plan whether your business can achieve the exponential growth that startups are built for. Third, market sizing provides strategic focus. It prevents founders from wasting time chasing tiny segments that don't matter. Instead, it helps you prioritize, making sure your product roadmap, go to market strategy, and expansion plans are aligned with the biggest opportunities. Ultimately, understanding market size is fundamental. It shapes everything from product development to how you pitch investors. It's not just an exercise in numbers, it's the foundation for making smarter strategic choices. Now let's walk through the three levels of market sizing: TAM, SAM, and SOM. Think of them as a funnel, narrowing from big picture theory to focused realism. At the top is TAM, total addressable market. This is the grand total, the entire potential market worldwide if your product achieved 100% penetration. It's a useful starting point because it defines the absolute ceiling of opportunity. Next is SAM, serviceable available market. This is a filtered version of TAM. It accounts for the portion of the market your business can realistically serve, given your business model, geography, product limitations, and regulatory environment. It's more grounded than TAM, but it still represents a broad, addressable opportunity. Finally, we have SOM, serviceable obtainable market. This is the most realistic measure, the slice of SAM you can actually capture in the near term, usually 2 to 3 years, given your resources, competition, and go to market strategy. SOM is the metric that investors scrutinize most closely because it shows whether you can realistically build a venture scale business. Together, TAM, SAM, and SOM form a framework that takes you from theoretical opportunity to practical execution. It helps you understand the dream, the reality, and the achievable starting point. TAM represents the maximum theoretical demand for your product. It's the broadest lens. What would happen if every potential customer globally adopted your solution? Calculating TAM often requires an industry wide perspective using reports, government data, and large scale research. For example, if you're building a ride hailing startup, your TAM includes every possible ride globally: taxis, ride shares, and even private car trips that could be replaced by your service. The value of TAM lies in its ability to show the big picture ceiling. It tells investors what the ultimate scale could be. However, TAM does not reflect reality. No startup will ever capture 100% of a global market. So it's less about forecasting revenue and more about proving the size of the vision. Investors want to see that the total market is big enough to support massive potential, even if only a small fraction is captured. In essence, TAM is about ambition. It shows what could be possible at the highest level, setting the stage for more practical analysis. While TAM paints the dream, SAM brings us closer to reality. SAM is your realistic target market, filtered down from TAM based on the actual constraints of your business model. SAM factors in geographic limitations. You may not be able to serve every country due to infrastructure, smartphone penetration, or logistics. It also considers regulatory restrictions. Some markets may be off limits due to local laws, licensing, or barriers to entry. SAM also reflects product capabilities. Your current product may not yet support every customer type or use case. Finally, SAM includes target customer segments. You may choose to focus on specific demographics or industries where your solution is most relevant. For example, for a ride hailing company, SAM isn't the entire global rides market. It's the total number of rides in cities where you can legally operate, where smartphone penetration is sufficient, and where your infrastructure can function effectively. SAM provides a more realistic view than TAM, but it still represents opportunity at scale. It tells investors and founders alike that while the global ceiling is massive, here is the portion of the market that's actually within reach, given current constraints. Now we arrive at SOM, the most practical and critical measure of all. SOM represents the realistic market share you can capture in the next 2 to 3 years. SOM requires competition analysis. You must consider existing players, their market share, and what differentiates your offering. You can't assume you'll take over the market immediately. SOM demands grounded assumptions about what share is realistically obtainable. SOM also accounts for resource constraints. Do you have the funding, the team, and the operational capacity to scale quickly? Ambition without resources is just wishful thinking. For investors, SOM is what matters most. They want to see whether your near term market opportunity is big enough to justify venture scale investment. SOM proves whether your startup can build a scalable business, not in a decade, but in the immediate future. In short, SOM is about execution. It tells the story of how you'll go from vision to traction and whether your path is credible. Let's see how this framework plays out in practice by looking at Uber. Uber's TAM was the global transportation market. This included every taxi ride and every potential ride hailing trip worldwide. It was massive, but entirely theoretical. Their SAM narrowed the focus to US metropolitan markets. These cities had high smartphone penetration, regulatory feasibility, and dense urban populations that made the model viable. This was still a large opportunity, but now filtered by real world constraints. Finally, Uber's SOM was San Francisco, their beachhead market. Here, they calculated a realistic percentage of rides they could capture as an initial target. By focusing narrowly on a single city, Uber validated its model, proved unit economics, and built traction before expanding to other markets. The winning strategy was to start small with a focused SOM, dominate one market, and then expand systematically. By conquering a beachhead, Uber de-risked its business model, gained proof points, and then scaled outward to capture more of its SAM and eventually its TAM. The lesson here is powerful. Focus on dominating one realistic market before chasing the world. Investors want to see discipline, validation, and scalability in action, not just global ambition. Understanding market size is not a formality, it's a survival skill for founders. TAM, SAM, and SOM provide a structured way to separate ambition from reality and to communicate both effectively. To investors, TAM shows the ceiling, SAM defines the realistic opportunity, SOM proves the near term plan. Together, they tell a story of vision, strategy, and execution. Great startups don't just dream about big markets, they methodically capture them one step at a time. They validate in small markets, scale into larger ones, and ultimately position themselves to dominate industries. Investors aren't just betting on the idea, they're betting on whether the market is big enough to create outsized returns and whether the founders are disciplined enough to navigate the funnel from TAM to SOM. So, as you think about your own startup, don't stop at the dream of a massive TAM. Narrow it down, filter it through SAM, and ground it in SOM. That's where credibility is built, funding is won, and scalable businesses are born.